The Koopalings are well-known characters and bosses in the Super Mario franchise. However, they have only been seen in the 2D side-scroller games. Now, what would happen if these Koopas were seen in a 3D game like Super Mario Galaxy or Super Mario Odyssey? Well, let's find out. The Koopalings debuted in the 1988 game Super Mario Bros. 3, and later appeared as bosses in various SNES-era Mario games before disappearing for a long time. They eventually reappeared in 2003's Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga, and then being redesigned for 2009's New Super Mario Bros. Wii, which has been followed by numerous appearances as both bosses in the Super Mario platformers and playable characters in various spin-offs. However, all these games were 2D or 2.5D. Now, what would happen if you put them in a 3D game for once? Thanks to their appearance in the new Super Mario Bros. Series, they got updated designs, which could easily be modified and put into a game like Super Mario Odyssey. But what would that look like? Does that even work? They're designed to function in a completely different world after all. Well, in order to find an answer for this, we will look at a couple of crucial elements that would change in a 3D world. First up, the way you encounter them, since in the 2D games you would just go to their castle on the map, where they are waiting. In the new Super Mario Bros. Games, they're just level selectors after all. You would just go to the final level with the castle, do a little platforming section in the castle, and then have a normal boss fight in a very standard arena. However, in the 3D games, they are usually incorporated into a very special level instead of being a challenge at the end of a normal platforming section. Now, in order to find out what would really change, we will take a look at the encounters that we have with Bowser Jr., since he is seen in both types of games. One big difference we can see immediately is the amount of exposition and cutscenes. You get a whole introduction when you encounter him. There is so much more story and funny or interesting scenes that make Bowser Jr. a lot more interesting. In the new Super Mario Bros. Games, they give you a funny or surprise look at best, and that's kind of where it ends. Because of this, the Koopalings have almost no character at all, and are quite emotionless characters compared to any other villains. Only in the spin-off games they start to show their true colors and became a bit more interesting. This would also happen in the 3D games if they were introduced there. A good example of this is the broodals. Every time you encounter them, they talk to you, explain what they're doing there, and talk about other important parts of the story. Besides that, you also get an idea of what their personalities are. For example, they gave Topper a bit of an accent. Even in other parts of the world and stuff like the brochure, they talk about the Broodals' personality and character. So overall, we know more about the Broodals than the Koopalings who have been around for a lot longer. So if they would go from 2D only characters to also appearing in the 3D titles, they would certainly develop more character and become a lot more fun. This would certainly improve the Koopalings in a lot of ways. They're already quite popular, and extra story building would certainly increase that. Maybe they could even work on the relationship between them and Bowser, since originally the Koopalings were depicted as Bowser's children and stated to be his offspring. However, Shigeru Miyamoto eventually affirmed that Nintendo's current story is that the Koopalings are not Bowser's children in 2012, leaving the Koopalings as his underlings and Bowser Jr. as his only child. So maybe they could add some more story, or maybe an explanation where they actually came from. Another thing the 3D games do is create giant and elaborate arenas or stages where the boss fights take place. So the overall look of the level and world is also completely different, which will also have an impact on the Koopalings. Now, another thing that will completely change is the boss fights, and here there is actually a huge difference. A good example of this is yet again Bowser Jr. If you compare his tactics and plans in the 2D games to the 3D ones, you can immediately see the difference. The different world opens the door for more complex and different attacks compared to the fights in the new Super Mario Bros. Series. In that game, he makes use of the Koopa clown car in a cool way. However, it's still quite basic. New and fun, but basic. However, in a game like Super Mario Galaxy, he uses huge robots with tons of different moves that all challenge the player in different ways. Besides that, the entire arena is completely different from the rest of the level, which is also a rare thing to see in the 2D games. Those usually have a little gimmick, but it's still a lot like the castle. For some reason, Nintendo tends to go more all out when it comes to the 3D titles. Most likely because they tend to be more popular and are great console sellers. Just look at Super Mario Odyssey, for example. Yet again, a 3D title that sells the console. There are also a lot of attacks in the boss fight that require you to use a certain mechanic in the game that would only function in 3D. For example, in the Mega Hammer battle seen in Super Mario Galaxy 2. It is a giant robot with large hammers for hands, operated by Bowser Jr. It attacks by launching bullet bills and banzai bills, and you must use Yoshi to catch those with his tongue and spit them back at the robot's 3 blue orbs, 2 of which reside on his chest, while the last one is found on its back. Something like this could work in 2D, but not as good. It's all possible and more fun because of the extra movement options the player has. And this isn't the only boss fight that becomes more elaborate and on a bigger scale because of the 3D world. Now the Koopalings would have to be redesigned to an extent. Mostly their tactics in battle would change. One iconic attack that would most likely be changed is the shell spin attack, since this one only goes from one side to the other. This would form quite a simple pattern and would also be extremely easy to dodge, since you can just step to the side. So for this one to work, they would have to change one thing: the way it moves around. And when it comes to this, there are only 2 options really. It either follows you around or bounces from wall to wall in different directions, similar to the broodals' hats. Both of these would be fitting and also likely, since they're both seen in certain Mario games. Another standard attack that would have to be changed is the Magic Wand Blast, because one slow-moving ball wouldn't really be a challenge. When it comes to this move, they would most likely make them shoot multiple ones at the same time. We've seen this in the new Super Mario Bros. Series before, and it would certainly make the fight more difficult. Now when it comes to their special moves like Lemmy Koopa's ball and Wendy her rings, these would most likely change in some way as well. Or maybe they will be replaced completely. With these attacks, it's not as easy to predict in what ways it would be different in the 3D games. Mostly because they aren't as basic, and Nintendo can actually do a lot of different things with them. And that's kind of where it ends. All the other things like their design, for example, wouldn't really change. Mostly the amount of cutscenes, their introduction, arena, character building, and tactics in their boss fights would be different. Now, would Nintendo ever do this? Well, we have no idea really. Throughout the years, they have never appeared in the 3D games, so it's not likely. But a man can dream, right? Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed. I almost lost this voiceover because my computer crashed, which was great, but luckily enough, Audacity is not stupid and saves like unsaved files, so it's great. So we made it, boys. Woo! Be sure to subscribe. What are you doing?